Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I want to do a more formal, more in-depth review slash guide to Angel. I tier 2'd him. I've been playing around with him in different game modes, and I've pretty much settled on my opinion of the character. It's quite high. I think he brings a lot to the table, even in a much more powerful speed class than even 6 months ago. And best of all, he is totally free. You get him from Dimension Rifts, so his biometrics are extremely accessible. You can also get him from the event quest if you were here and you were playing before that it changed over and it was giving you the tokens every day, so you can get an extra 20 for him. I myself don't need them anymore, so I'm going to pick up some other things. But I think it's really important to cover a character like this because I think he's one of the better characters from this update, and also because of the fact that he's so accessible that everyone's going to have him. So it's good to know where he stands on your roster, how you can compare him to other characters, and what you can equip him with to increase his strengths or shore up his weaknesses. Now, the character plays very much like Vulture. He's got lots of iframes, and he flies around a lot. In addition, he is kind of like a mini Sharon Rogers because he has the third skill self-buff immunity that gives him the accumulated damage. So the accumulated damage, remember, when you cast that, you have 5 seconds of damage immunity, and during that time, if you get hit, of course, skills or characters that penetrate will still deal damage, but everyone else, if they hit you, they're basically just boosting your attack. In addition to that accumulated damage, he also has a heal. So the third skill is a really important one to begin his combos. You always want to start off with the third skill when you're opening your rotation or after a cutscene, because you're going to get a heal, you're going to get immunity, and you're going to get that boost to his damage. And you can see a substantial increase in his damage when you lead off with the third skill versus when you forget to use it. After the third skill, you want to continue on with a skill that doesn't have an iframe, because you do want to get hit, and when you're in iframe, you're not taking any damage. If he dodges attacks, it's okay, so it's perfectly fine to build your Angel with lots of dodge if you want to do that, although he has no guaranteed dodge, because it's the true damage regardless of defense and dodge rates. So regardless of that calculation, it will still count towards your boosted all attack increase. So my preferred rotation would be to do 3 into 1, because 1 is his only non-iframe skill besides 3. 2, 4, and 5 are all iframes, which is fantastic. He's got 3 long iframes. After 3 and 1, my opinion would be to go into his next most damaging skill, because you only have 10 seconds on the damage buff and you want to take advantage of it. So I would go immediately into his 5th skill. Like most characters, his last skill deals the most damage. So 3, 1, 5 is a pretty robust skill rotation to go through. The only thing that I think Angel is missing from his skills, from his kit, is tertiary or kind of like extra stats. He has no ignore dodge, he has no guaranteed dodge, he has no guaranteed crit rate, he has no boost to crit damage, so he's kind of missing all of those, which makes maxing out his stats harder to do. And then he doesn't have much crowd control. He's got a short kind of pull in effect at the end of his, or the beginning of his 4th skill, and he's got a very short 1-second stun on his 2nd skill, even though it's not listed. But besides that, he's low on those. So you'll find that for stages where he's 3 against 1, so if you do a solo entry stage on Shadowland, I know it's kind of an extreme example, but for those, I found it particularly difficult to use Angel because he had a hard time grouping up enemies, keeping them grouped up, and therefore he had a hard time dealing damage to everyone simultaneously. While his 5th skill does have some AoE, it's not very large, so if enemies are just a few tiles or a few kind of squares away, I don't know how you'd measure the in-game screen, but if they're a bit far away, let's say 3 or 4 character models away, they're not going to be in the blast radius. So you do have to carefully take that into consideration. His positioning is a little bit more important. Unlike Vulture, who has a much larger attack wingspan, especially with his uniform, he drags characters in with a lot of his skills, 4, 2, and 5. Angel doesn't do that. So I would say that is the biggest weakness to the character, in addition to the fact that he has no other defensive abilities aside from the heal. So no damage reduction, no triggering auto immunity or invincibility, no guaranteed dodge. So when he's played on automatic, if he doesn't do his iframes, and he doesn't do his immunity. I know there's only one skill left, but that's going to leave him vulnerable. And he's also vulnerable to characters who ignore iframes, although there's only 2 right now. It is definitely a possibility. So ultimately, the skill rotation that I would use for Angel would be 3-1-5, 2 cancel 4. You can play with 2 cancel 4, you can do 3-1-5-4, you could do 3-1-5-2, it really doesn't matter. If you're going to do his 4th skill, I would recommend letting the entire skill play out, because he flies up, he comes down, and then he releases a burst of kind of charged feathers or charged kind of blades in the form of these like yellow shots, and that deals additional damage. As far as the build goes for Angel, you can basically go one of 2 ways. Because he has high native HP, you can go, and he also has the heal, which is 17% of his max HP when you level up the skill. Definitely going for max HP is an option for him, kind of like Rogue. So you can build him like Rogue, although he doesn't benefit as much from the dodge, because he doesn't have guaranteed dodge like Rogue does. He benefits in much the same way that she does from the max HP. So you can compare those 2 characters in that way. You can go with max HP, you can go with invincibility. I think those are 2 great stats. Dodge is okay as a secondary stat, not as good as max HP. Guard break immunity I don't think is an absolute necessity, because he has so many iframes and they're very fast to trigger, but it is a luxury you could put on him if you wanted to use him against specific characters. On the offensive side of things, I think you're going to need to give him ignore defense somewhere, because it's very hard to get capped without that, so keep ignore defense in mind. Aside from that, crit rate, crit damage, and ignore dodge are all fantastic stats. And of course, a damage proc is the ultimate stat for an offensive character. That is the route that I'm going to take. I still don't have an obelisk for him, so all of the feats that I completed with him, like clearing high-level Shadowland stages, were done sans obelisk, like without. But ultimately, I think I'm going to rest on a crit damage, crit rate, damage proc, obelisk. But let me know what you guys think is optimal for Angel. New uniform kind of notwithstanding. As far as ISO 8 sets go, I think Power of Angry Hulk is great. It's easier to get than Overdrive for most players, and it gives him attack speed, which he doesn't have natively. So again, it's another difficult stat to cap if you don't have the stats coming from somewhere else. You don't really want to use Uru to get attack speed, because it's much harder to stack it. Because it adds so much less per Uru, and you only have a finite number of slots. So I do think in this case Power of Angry Hulk is better than Overdrive, but Overdrive is also fine. I wouldn't go for Hawk's Eye. If you wanted to go super defensive, go for Drastic Density Enhancement, but I probably don't recommend that. For the Uru, I would go physical attack for sure, of course, and then either HP if you want defense, maybe HP and ignore defense or dodge, and then if you want to go offensive, crit rate, crit damage. And then just keep in mind you're going to try to cap the other skills. My Angel, for the purposes of what I'm going to show you against Infinity Thanos, is rocking pretty low stats. If you see here, he's only got 30% crit rate, 137 or 138 crit damage, which is very low, almost base crit damage. 46% ignore defense, not capped. 46.5% cooldown, not capped. And 122% attack speed, not capped. And he's just under 15,500 physical attack. But even with these kind of average stats and no obelisk, you're going to see how much damage he pumps out in a hurry. He's got very hard-hitting skills, and when you combine that with his immunity and his accumulated damage from his 3rd skill, he really starts to crank out some impressive numbers. Keep in mind, he also has a very meta tier 2 or leadership passive ability with the debuff removal. I didn't want to dwell on this too much to skew the value of the character, but I think this is really important. It makes him a very good pick for even timeline leaderships to replace Wasp or Malekith or other characters like that. It makes him great for Alliance Conquest as well, and it just makes him basically permanently relevant. If even his other abilities fall short or his skills, he still has the usefulness to protect your team from webbing, time freeze, and all those other kind of pesky effects. We're going to go ahead and just give him a... We're going to go just double damage buffs from the tier 2 passives of Shuri and Valkyrie. We're not going to go for Coulson for the guaranteed crit because his crit and crit damage are pretty low. And we're just going to use his leadership so that he doesn't get debuffed. And we're going to see just how fast we can take down Thanos. So he definitely has buffs here with the stacking 45% increased damage to supervillains. It's definitely one of the best buffs in the game to have. But keep in mind, no obelisk and those kind of so-so stats that I was talking about before. So we want to open here with these skills right here. We want to take damage. Then we're going to open with his 5th skill, go right back into 3 and 1. We want to take damage there, as I said before, but the 2nd skill iframe is super long, so you can use it basically as much as you want in between. It's got a low cooldown, and basically by the time the skill is done, you'll be able to cast it again. But you can see the damage is insane, so no damage leadership. And just these 2 ladies helping me out, and I'm cranking out. And this is no damage proc, so I have no doubt that he could do this in 30 seconds or less with a damage proc combined with his damage accumulation passive. You can see there the 5th skill ticks for a wild number when he gets that off. And you can just keep going 4 and 2 if you want to keep your enemy kind of just there. And you can just sit there after the 3rd skill. You don't even have to attack because you want to take hits. And he's basically going to be dead here. 1 minute, no damage leadership. I don't know if putting a damage leadership and switching out Valkyrie would be better. I love the animation at the end. Thank you, Netmarble, for changing that. But yeah, very strong, free character from the Dimension Rifts. Stronger than Vulture. So that would be kind of someone you can compare him to. If you think Vulture has good damage, Angel's damage is higher. I did the testing. I don't want to bore you with the numbers specifically, but the end result is his damage is better than Vulture's. Even though I'm not comparing it with the uniform, it is better. Of course, if you had a mythic uniform Vulture, it kind of confuses the stats a little bit, but he hits super hard, Angel, and very fun to play, easy to play, and aside from the crowd control, he's got a lot to offer with the heals and the immunity and all of the kind of cool animations. So let me know what you guys think of Angel. Let me know if you're going to build him differently now that you've seen my stats and my numbers and the speed at which he ripped through Thanos, completely skipping his 1st phase and most of his 3rd phase. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.